Good morning, everybody. It's Leap Day 2024. It's Thursday. And I'm going to spend today doing some catch up on things that have been happening, just to talk about current events. The biggest one that really hit, well, there were several of them that hit yesterday, but Mitch McConnell going to step down in November. I honestly feel like this man should step down today and give them the opportunity to get somebody else there in the Senate who's going to have a little bit more of a backbone when it comes to going up against Chuck Schumer. And because according to Andy Biggs, what's happening with the impeachment of Mayorkas is Chuck Schumer says he's going to motion to table the issue, and they aren't even going to bring it to the Senate floor for a vote if they should move ahead with the impeachment hearing. So we need somebody in Mitch McConnell's place who's going to fight, for the right thing to happen, because there is so much. There is a small video. I went to a meeting last night, and there's a small video that they played of Andy Biggs explaining all of the things that Mayorkas has done that's against his oath and against the Department of Homeland Security's mission, and how he's basically broken the law, and said that, like, some of the immigration laws that are in place, that they didn't like what was going on, and so they just decided to change it. And so they've taken matters into their own hands is basically what they've done. So listening to this little snippet of a video from Andy Biggs last night and hearing all of the things that he has violated and done, Mayorkas, I'm just really kind of appalled and stunned that we've got elected officials there in DC, in the Senate, and even in the House who voted against this whole thing. But when you hear the story, instead of sitting there with, cotton in your ears because it's Republican speaking and I'm a Democrat and I'm not going to hear what you have to say, instead of using your comprehensive listening skills and understanding what is going on in this country when issues are brought up to the most important body, Congress, who we the people have elected to represent us. And these people go there trying to bring awareness to the things that some of the bureaucrats, not elected officials, but the bureaucrats are doing wrong. And these open border issues and the crimes that are being committed across the United States, this is no longer a partisan issue. This just isn't about Democrats and Republicans and who's going to have the upper hand. We're talking about human lives now. And not only American lives, but lives of the people who are coming across the border, going through the Darien Gap, making that trek, women who are being raped, human smuggling that's happening, selling these people into human slavery and sex slavery. Everybody should be worried about what's happening. Everybody should be questioning the United Nations. Congress should be having many, many meetings about pulling out, the importance of pulling out of the United Nations, kicking that organization off U.S. soil, get them out of New York, get them out of here. Every dime that the United States government has sent to the United Nations, the majority of that is going towards printing up the pamphlets and handing it out to the people and showing them the correct routes to take and how to get here easily, and sending money in ways of supporting these people. And the United Nations has, stop points along the whole trek that they've shown these people, through the Darien Gap and up through South America. They've got places where these people can stop and get help, get refreshment, get reprieve. If they need monetary help, they'll probably give it to them because they've got, millions of dollars from the United States that we're handing out to them. So they play a big part in this. and they play a big part in one world government. And they play a big part in, we need to redistribute the wealth of the United States throughout the world. I've mentioned this before on my podcast, but go to the United Nations website and search 8 reasons why remittances are good. 8 reasons why remittances, just type that in and this article should come up. And go to number 5 and read it and get an understanding of what the United Nations is all about. Remittances are the money that illegals who are here in the country make at a job, and the majority of it is not taxed. Then they send it home to their families. Those are called remittances. And the United Nations applauds this. $774 billion is anticipated to be leaving the United States this year, 2024, in remittances and going into other countries' economies. That money will not be reinvested. That money earned will not be reinvested. That money earned probably didn't have any income tax paid on it. So we've got to pay attention. And at this meeting, they allowed me to get up at the end of the meeting and actually talk a little bit about it. The video that they showed, alien invasion, it was a video that Congressman Andy Biggs had put together from Arizona, but it was made in 2022, so it was a little outdated of some of the things they were talking about, what Congress was doing and things that were happening down at the border, because things have gotten so much worse since then. But they were referencing in that video fentanyl overdoses. And of course, I let everybody know at that meeting, the verbiage and how they view this has changed, because they're referring to it as fentanyl poisonings now. This is not fentanyl overdoses. People are not just taking fentanyl and shooting it into their veins and overdosing on it, or ingesting it or smoking it out, whatever they do with it. Fentanyl is put very small amounts in pills that are made to look like Adderall or Xanax or different medications that people may take for anxiety, or a painkiller that somebody may hand to somebody else. This is the kind of stuff that they lace fentanyl in. And this is why it's called poisonings and not overdoses, because these people are not they're not knowingly taking fentanyl. And I was watching Mark Levin the other night on Fox News, and he had this gentleman who's written a book. It's called Blood Money, I believe is a title of the book. And he was talking in there that he was interviewing him, but he was talking about they've got over 2,000 Chinese. I don't know if they're scientists, pharmacists, pharmaceutical type people who are down there in Mexico and working right alongside the cartel. And these Chinese people know how to mix all of the product that China sends over in order to get fentanyl put together. And so they're helping the cartel. They're sending pill molds over from China so they can make these pills that look like Adderall, Xanax, certain painkillers. They're sending them over there. So the Chinese is actually assisting the cartel in this activity. And it's enriching not only the cartel, but China, because of, the amounts of supplies that they're sending over to Mexico. And of course, they're getting paid for it. And then, of course, the end goal of China and the cartel is to kill Americans, which is happening. This is an epidemic. And it's not only the deaths of the fentanyl, which is running over. Let me silence my phone so it's not going off, because this thing will go off all through my podcast. It's not only the fentanyl deaths that are affecting Americans. The crime wave that is happening, and we're going to go over a few of those today, but the crime wave that's happening and the way that these illegals are coming in here feeling so entitled and untouchable, and on top of that, then the crimes that are committed that Americans are actually killed. This wave is only going to get bigger, folks. There's no way it's going to slow down or get smaller, because these people, the longer they're here and the longer they're displaced and the longer they're not given the free place to live, how they're reading and hearing about all these others are in New York and, Chicago and different places. And if these groups of illegals, these gang members and stuff, end up in a city that's not a sanctuary city and they don't have the ways and means to provide for them and give them hotel rooms for free, what do you think is going to happen? There's going to be an uprising. And these Venezuelan illegals, they come from a socialist country. And so they come from a mindset that the government gives you everything you need. And so that is why they're looking to the Biden administration to provide them with everything. These interviews are having with these young Hispanic girls walking in the streets of New York, pushing their baby strollers, having babies. And, oh, yeah, we've been living rent-free for 7 months. Are you looking for a job? Do you have a job? Oh, no. We're given 3 meals a day. They give us diapers and everything we need for our babies. Housekeeping comes and cleans a room once a day, changes the sheets every day. Why would anybody go out and look for a job when that's what you're being provided? What American wouldn't want that? What homeless veteran wouldn't want that? What homeless American family, a mother or a father who are out on the streets and living out of a vehicle with their 2 or 3 children and trying their hardest to get those kids to school, who wouldn't want what they're given to these illegals? And this is American taxpayer money that they're doing it with. We have got to become so mad, and we have to start standing up and letting our elected officials know this is not right. And another big question that I have, the $451 billion that is estimated what it's going to cost in 2024 to support the illegal invasion, federal taxpayer dollars. This is just being willy-nilly spent by the Biden administration. Where is that money coming from? What programs is it coming out of? Because Congress did not appropriate $451 billion for anticipated costs for the illegal invasion this year. So where is the federal government getting this money? What programs are being decimated? Where are they stealing the money from to support this agenda of the Biden administration? This is what we have to keep pressing for answers for, because Congress is the purse strings of this country. And you just can't spend $451 billion of taxpayer money without Congress knowing about it or approving it. Just like when Biden was doing those airstrikes over there in the Middle East a few days ago, Congress has to approve all of those things. Everything's being done by executive order. And this all started with Obama, thinking that he was the king and he could just, do executive orders and have his agenda put into place. And of course, Trump did a few of them because he had to, because of the illegal immigration problem and the open borders at that time. They were very useful. They weren't the types of things that Obama was doing. Then you have Biden come into office and he steps right into the executive order thing, but he starts decimating all of the things that President Trump had put into place. And he just starts enacting all these executive orders on his own. This is wrong. And this is where we need to rein the federal government and the executive branch back in. We need to get things back in line of how it was intended to be. Because the further we get off the rails, the harder it's going to be to get this train back on the tracks, folks. You can't keep allowing this to happen. Let me see. I've got a couple of I want to go back into the no. I've got a couple articles that I wanted to go over. And Let me pull it up. I apologize. I just clicked out of this tab and I meant to open it. So I'm going to pull this article back up. I'll share it with you. It's the article about Mitch McConnell, but he's 82 and he's going to step down as a Republican Senate leader after serving for almost 20 years. But, you know, I've been reading a lot of articles and talking to a lot of people, and they're saying, why doesn't he just step down now? And I said this earlier. He says, battle with constant calls to step down in recent months over his support for sending more aid to Ukraine, and is the last member of the Republican leadership not to have endorsed Donald Trump's 2024 presidential bid. Of course, they say that he's talking about doing it now. Let's see. So it's just going to be his last term. I don't think he's running. Oh, he's up for re-election in 2 years in 2026. I'm sure that this will probably be his last term. I mean, at 82 years old, why do you want to keep spending your time in Congress when we've got younger and more adept kind of leadership that is running for these positions in the Republican Party? We need a new revamp. We need fresh blood. We need new ideas. We need to get these dinosaurs out of Congress. We need to bring people in who understand the Constitution, who understand the overreach of the government, the federal government, the executive branch. And we need to bring people in who are going to pull things back together to where we're running like a well-oiled machine again. Like I said, the further we get off track with this kind of stuff, the harder it's going to be, the longer this goes on. And so I think this next Congress that comes in 2025, I think they really need to be concentrating on, getting all these loose strings and making it harder for the executive branch to do these kind of executive decisions that they make. And this is something I was talking about at the meeting last night when it pertains to illegal immigration. When I had been over in Texas a few weeks ago, I met with the border czar there, Michael Banks, and had dinner with him. And we talked about the support that Governor Abbott has from the 26 other governors. And I don't know if more have joined since then in support. But we talked about SB 4, which is what Texas put through to declare the invasion and to do the sort of things that, put everything in line so that Abbott was able to enact the state rights because the federal government is not doing anything about it. And declaring an invasion is one of the first steps. But Michael was telling me that he was looking heavily into SB 1070, which was the law passed by Russell Pierce that was so controversial. And all of these organizations, of course, pro-illegal organizations, filed lawsuits. And of course, it went before the Supreme Court, and they knocked out two of the things in the bill. But everything else is standing. And so Michael Banks was saying, we looked heavily at that, as we were putting together SB 4 here in Texas. And he said, and we understood, looking at the language and how it was put together by Russell Pierce, nothing against Russell Pierce, but, times have changed and maybe they didn't look into things as deep as they should have on the two issues that were knocked out. But he said, we understood the mistakes that were made in the verbiage and why the Supreme Court of Arizona would have knocked that out. So they fixed it, and they kind of kept those types of things in there in the state of Texas. However, in the state of Arizona, and this is what I was talking to the folks about at the meeting last night, in the state of Arizona, SB 1070 still stands. One of the biggest parts of it is the ability to, it's unlawful for anybody to transport illegals in the state of Arizona via bus, vehicle. So all of these bus drivers, these Border Patrol bus drivers and these NGO bus drivers, any of those people that are transporting illegals from the border all the way up through central Arizona into Sky Harbor in Phoenix, Sky Harbor Airport, they are doing that against the law. And so I was asking Michael Banks, I said, if we talk to, Sheriff Lamb and Sheriff Daniels down in Cochise County and Sheriff Wilmot there in Yuma County, and tell them, if you look at SB 1070, you have the authority to arrest these bus drivers and impound the buses. And I said, and if we could get these governors that have backed up Governor Abbott to back up these sheriffs for doing, the types of things that we need to do to protect the citizens, not only of Arizona, but of America, because so many of them are coming through Arizona now. And he said, absolutely. This is something that we need to look into. But the problem is we've got so many laws in place that are A, not being enforced by law enforcement, B, legislators down in Phoenix and in many other states across this country, they're just writing new legislation instead of looking into the fact we've got those laws on the books already. We've got some legislation going through down here in Phoenix at the Capitol talking about E-Verify and how it needs to be mandatory. Well, it already is according to SB 1070, and that was left into place. Businesses who hire illegals and don't go through the E-Verify system, they can A, be fined, B, lose their business license, and C, be shut down. Why isn't this being enforced? Because we know a lot of businesses here in especially in the metropolitan Phoenix area, a lot of businesses hire these illegals. You go through fast food places and you can hardly even understand the person who's taking your order. No matter where they're from, but these employers should be towing the line and following the law in Arizona, and they should all be using E-Verify. Now, the big question is what Mayorkas and what Biden are doing is giving these illegals work permits, especially when they apply for the asylum on the phone app. They get to the border and they're immediately given a work permit. But is that really lawful employment? Are these people really here illegally in the country? That's the challenge. That's the big question. Should these people be getting these jobs? There was a big, hold on a second. I think I sent it to myself. Kathy, I think her name is Kathy Hochul, the governor there in New York. Let me see if I can pull up that article because she's talking about, oh wait, it might be on one of these tabs that I've got pulled up. Hold on a second. Here it is. My sister texts this to me, so I've got this to share. So the New York governor, Kathy Hochul, is moving forward with her plan to hand illegal immigrants thousands of the best jobs in the city. New York is even changing their laws to give illegals government jobs. They're dropping high school diploma and English proficiency requirements. Now, how are you going to have somebody who doesn't speak English working in a government job? This is insane. Insane. They won't even be able to read, things that are up in English in signs. So what are they going to start doing in New York? Printing their government job, guides in 160 plus languages because that's the kind of that's how many people are coming across the border from that many countries. What are they going to do with signs on the wall in government buildings? Have 160 little signs, with it spelled out in case a person from that country is working in a government job in that building? So, approved earlier this month, the Civil Service Commission is working with agencies to implement the changes, which include dropping typical application requirements like proof of a high school diploma or proficiency in English. These people can come from these countries and have a third grade education, and they're going to be handed a government job? Are you freaking serious? Oh, so the goal is to make it faster for migrants, now they're calling them migrants, to get jobs once they get legal work authorization. Hochul is eyeing around 4,000 entry-level positions that are currently unfilled within state agencies, and these include clerical and administrative roles, technical support, equipment service, and repair jobs, as well as those positioned in food services. So let me ask you something. If they're not qualified in technical support, if they've never done clerical or administration work, if they don't know equipment service and repair jobs, if they've never done that sort of thing, and then in food services, how clean are these people? Are they going to get health updates, health checks? What is going on in this world? Why don't they have this kind of effort to go into areas where it's a high level of unemployment of American citizens? Why isn't the effort being put in to giving these people these jobs? Why should illegals get the jobs over veterans who need jobs, homeless veterans who need a leg up, who probably have the experience in technical support or equipment services and repair jobs? They were in the military, for God's sakes. This just doesn't even make any sense to me. I don't know if you can hear some of this nonsense.
To SUNY, I have 10,000 openings. So this is to give options for people, but to say we are working intensely to get work authorization applications. These are all legal people.
The goal is to make it faster for migrants.
They're not legal people, folks. They're not legal people. And don't let them tell you that. Because what they are is they applied for the asylum program on the phone while they were in Panama or before they went through the Darien Gap, or when they were in South America, or when they got to Mexico. They got the phone app that, of course, the United Nations and Department of Homeland Security and all these NGOs, they all know how it works. They'll help these people. They got on their phones and they applied for asylum. And therefore, because they went through that phone app, they immediately get a work permit when they come to the United States. They're not legal, like Kathy Hochul said in that little snippet. This is a bunch of BS what they're trying to pull over on us. What Mayorkas is doing and what the Biden administration doing is against the law. And in the meeting last night, they were talking about states nullifying federal laws. Like, if the federal government, if they pass laws in DC, a state can say, we nullify that. We're not going to follow that law here in the state of Arizona. And that's what Texas has done. But I reminded them in that meeting, we have a president who is nullifying all federal laws regarding illegal immigration and our immigration laws. He's nullified all of them because he's doing just what the hell he wants. And our Cuban refugee Mayorkas, who's heading up Department of Homeland Security, of course he's pushing to do whatever he can to drop the sanctions that are placed against Cuba right now. We have over 740,000 Cubans that have come in the last few months into the United States. They're involved in some crime that's happening. They're in concentrations down in Florida because that's where it's culturally the same as their country, And so that's where they tend to go, is to Florida. It's so far gone that you just wonder, how are we ever going to pull this back? How are we ever going to get listen, folks, I know that it's more like 12 million people that have come over the border since Biden's been in office, with the staggering daily numbers that were happening at the border in Texas and in Arizona. And for this going on now, it's going to be, almost 3.5 years. And with the 12 to 17 million we already had living here, we're probably looking at 30 to 35 million illegals that are present in our country. This is a big demographics. And it's changing because of the census that happens too. And of course, this is why the Democrats were pushing so hard, to make sure that everybody is counted in the census, because these illegals are important to them, because they have them go to these red areas. They have them disproportionately settle in red areas because they want to switch it over to Democratic run areas. Of course, they do go to sanctuary cities a lot too, but sanctuary states and stuff, but they're really pushing them to go into the areas that are Republican heavy, because they want to change the demographics. And once they start doing consensus and including these illegal aliens that are living in our country, it increases the population, which will increase the likelihood of getting more congressional representation in those states and allowing more Democrats to be voted into office by the very people that the Biden administration is allowing to freely invade our country. And down at the Capitol in Arizona, they're trying to pass some legislation right now where, when the census is done, that that if you are not a citizen of the United States, you won't be counted in the census in Arizona. A lot of people confuse that with a resident. Well, if they're living there, they have to be counted. No, Arizona's trying to pass a law that you have to be a citizen in order to be counted in the census when it happens. Now, we've got a Democratic governor who vetoes everything that's good for the state of Arizona, that the Republicans get pushed through the House and the Senate here. But this is why our local elections are so important for the state legislation here in Arizona. We've got to get a bigger majority of the Republicans in the House and the Senate. You've got to get good, strong conservatives who understand what's happening. And why? Because when we pass a good, comprehensive immigration bill, or a great bill about voting integrity, and it passes, but it gets to the governor's desk and she vetoes it, when it comes back, we need to have the authority there at the legislation to override these vetoes and get this stuff passed. That's why it's really important, when you do have a Democratic governor or a Democratic president, to have the majority in the House and the Senate, on a state level, on a federal level, because you're able to do that sort of thing and push legislation and actually be doing your jobs, not being hamstrung by the Democratic president or governor. So really pay attention, really talk to your neighbors, really make sure that everybody that you know who's a Republican is going to be out voting. And if they get their mail-in ballots, to get them turned in. If they can't get them turned in, have them call Turning Point Action in Tempe. They will get young volunteers who volunteer at Turning Point Action to come to your house and pick up your ballot and get it turned in for you. Call a neighbor, call a friend, call family. Don't let those ballots sit on the counter. That was the one thing that Republicans did that was so bad in the state of Arizona. They got their ballots, then they didn't do anything about it. I think it was over 16,000 of them were not returned by registered Republicans, folks. And that makes a big difference in elections, especially when Abe, for the Attorney General, was, I think it was 2,000, a very small amount that was separating them. So, and a lot of these legislative district races were affected by this too. I'm sure of it. All right. Oh, this was something a little interesting, and I'm sharing it only because I was very engaged and watching the Trump, the whole deal there in DC with Letitia James. And so here's this woman who is, well, this lady who is on, I think it's Twitter. She got asked to look into Letitia James' financials last week. And it's interesting when you have somebody like this, attorney general, going after somebody saying you gypped these people out of their money, victimless crime. You have the banks who testified, who said, we got all of our money back. We would do business with Trump again. No harm. There was no harm done. We're not complaining. We're not filing lawsuits. But the attorney general decided that she's going to do it and steal $454 million from Donald Trump to go where? To do what? To give to who? But anyway, as this woman is looking over her expenditures, look at this, $28,000, over $28,000 spent on luxury hotels. She went to Puerto Rico twice. And then there's the airfare. In the 5 years she's been in the New York State Attorney General position, excuse me. I don't know why I did that. I switched out. She spent over $84,000 on airfare to fly herself all over the country. And this includes private jet rentals. So her expenditures from 2018 to 2023, $117,648 on hotels, over $84,000 on airfare, over $15,000 on car rentals, over $101,000 on meals and catering, and $65,709 in reimbursement. She has spent $384,495 on all of these things, 19, 21, 22, in the 5 years she's been the attorney general. She's billed her campaign over $20,000 a year for meals. And no, these aren't large catering events. These are receipts for everything from $18 at Dunkin' Donuts to $60 at Dave & Buster's to $165 at an oyster bar in Massachusetts, and then $700 at a steakhouse in Brooklyn. There's thousands spent on Ubers and Lyfts, tens of thousands spent on office supplies, supposedly, at everywhere from Target to BJ's Wholesale. Over $7,000 dropped at a nightclub in New York City and billed as office expenses. To her campaign, folks. I could go on, and the multiple stays at the Beverly Hills Wilshire, the $65,000 in reimbursement to campaign consultants, which could literally be anything. And speaking of campaign consultants, can anyone tell me why a state attorney general would need to spend $300,000, over $300,000 in a single year on campaign consultants when they just won re-election the previous November? What could she possibly be consulting on? Furthermore, why do these million-dollar campaign consultancy firms always seem to be ran out of random two-bedroom apartments? This is just crazy. So, this is something that we need to look into. But of course, again, you've got, these are Democrats. It doesn't matter how they spend their money. I mean, look at the Santos guy in Congress for how he spent some of his campaign money. And he was immediately brought before Congress, kicked out of Congress. They had a trial. But, all of these other Democrats, and they've talked about AOC and Ilhan Omar and a bunch of them who have spent their campaign dollars illegally. They'll never be questioned. They'll never be brought forward. The other thing is ghost donors. It says, obviously, 2022 is off the charts when you look at the amount of contributions that she got. 2018 was over 3 million, almost 4 million. And then 2022 was 3.2 million. In 2023 was 1.6 million. Number of receipts. So to get 1.6 million, she has 2,800 receipts. To get 3.2 million, she had 32,593. In-state donors, and out-of-state donors. It's like, why would there be this many out-of-state donors for an attorney general in New York? In 2022, you had over 12,400 in-state donors, but you had 20,185 out-of-state donors. Who in the heck doesn't live in New York and would be contributing to her campaign? Honestly. These are the things that make me go, this doesn't seem right. That can be shut out. Let's see. We've talked about that. I'm going through all the articles that I had pulled up here. Talked about that one. So I can't pull this article up, but I wanted to go over it with you. I'm sure some of you have heard about it. So, there's a lot of these Africans from Senegal that are coming here. A ton of them cross over the border here in Arizona, and a lot of them are crossing over in Akuma, California right now too. But so the Senegalese man was running an illegal migrant shelter to house 87 in his shop basement, and he was busted for having a second location. So this man ran a shelter in Queens, and he also ran this one in the Bronx. So he had a shelter that held 87 people in his shop's basement. And so the second store, they found at least 45 confined beds were found inside a basement and first floor of a closed store on East Kingsbridge Road. The migrants were removed from their housing and taken to city-run shelters. But this guy was charging 87 illegals $300 a month for a bed to sleep in, and he was providing some meals for them. That ends up being $26,100 a month, which ends up being $313,000 a year. And he was doing the same thing in a second one. So why would this guy need to have his businesses? Of course, these businesses are going to be shut down because he can rent them out and let people sleep there and cook meals for them and make much more than he would if he had to run a business and pay sales tax and employees and all that kind of stuff. So the funny thing is, though, that this guy gave an interview and said, look, they've shut me down, but the city of New York has no place for these people to go, because once they've been, it's all single men. And a lot of them, once they've been at some of these city-run areas that they let the illegals go stay out, once they've been there 45 days, 30 in some of them, they kick them out and they tell them, you're going to have to find your own place. So this guy says, we're providing that place for them. And so now he's talking about, I'm going to sue New York because they are racist against African people. That's going to be the new, lawsuit reason now. If anything is done against these illegals, their righteous kind of better than thou, you owe us all of this attitude that they come here with, this is what they're going to fall back on. And they know, this guy, this African Black man knows, the arguments that the Democrats have about reparations, the arguments that we have about how America is so racist. They know this is an agenda of the Democratic Party. So, of course, he talks about this on the news. Guaranteed, he probably had the ACLU and 50 other Democratic-based lawyers try and get in touch with them to say, we'll file the lawsuit for you. This is what they do best. So, and there was another woman who was caught too, and she was doing the same thing. So this is happening a lot in New York. So illegal immigration is not only costing the taxpayers unbelievable amounts of money, but it's making people, of course, the NGOs are the biggest rakers in of the money and the billions of dollars that the federal government's forking out with no accountability and no follow-up with these NGOs. But you've got these illegals who are coming here and actually benefiting off of it too. What illegal comes to the United States and instantly opens a business and then instantly starts making $26,100 a month? My God. And that's tax-free money, guaranteed, because how are these illegals going to report that's rent payment and have a landlord to put down on their tax returns? This is rent-free, tax-free money for these people. And yet you and I are struggling to pay for groceries. Go to the grocery store. I mean, I got 37 items the other day and it was over $100. $130, I think. It's like, are you kidding me? I cannot believe how expensive everything has become. I went out to lunch with 3 of my granddaughters yesterday, and they wanted to go to Cheesecake Factory. I couldn't believe that the lunchtime pasta bowl was $17. You know, you go and look at the dinner size portion, which shouldn't be any bigger than the lunch because I couldn't even finish it. But for dinner, it's $27, $28 for a bowl of pasta. And then you pay extra to have some protein in it. I don't remember Cheesecake Factory being that expensive. You can't get a club sandwich there at lunchtime for under $17. I told them we're never going there again. This is ridiculous. And, you know, they all ordered sodas, and that was $15 right there. It was $5 a soda, $15 to start it all off before we even got anything to eat. How are Americans, you know, going to survive? But by all means, let these illegals come across the border, open up a little business in New York, and start renting out to illegals and start making $26,000 a month. How many of you would like to make $26,100 a month of tax-free money? My God, this is just insane. The opportunities that are given to these people, and then they're so ungrateful that now we're going to sue. Honestly, I don't know how much crazier it can get here. There was one other article. Well, I'm going to share this. You know, everybody's heard about the fires that are going on in Texas. And I thought this was a pretty interesting, you know, take on it. The majority, 88% of Texas's total cattle and calves on feed are in the Panhandle. That's about 2.35 million head of cattle, which is 5% higher. I don't know what else that says. Anyway, in the Panhandle, it's where it just so happens 500,000 acres of land is being decimated by engineered wildfires. Are they targeting our food sources? You know, this is actually food for thought, right? These cows, you know, they create methane, and it's a bad thing to have cows. So are these really engineered, manufactured fires that are happening there in Texas? You know, you look at the other things that have happened to the livestock industry. You look at what's happening over in Europe with the European Union and what the farmers are fighting up against and how they're protesting and how they have finally backed down. This is how America needs to be. The farmers here are being affected also. You've got crazy idiots like Bill Gates, you know, buying up the farmland, and what are we doing? What are we doing about it? We're just like, yeah, okay. Why shouldn't he be able to do that sort of thing? The last thing I want to mention, because we're running out of time here, you know, and I've talked about this on my podcast a lot about the Venezuelan gang and the violence and what's going on. Venezuela's violent deaths fall to a 22-year low on migration. Their gangs are all coming here, folks. Venezuela's rate of violent deaths dropped to its lowest level in more than 2 decades following years of massive migration as both criminals and victims fled the nation's economic crisis. The Venezuelan Violence Observatory, registered 26.8 violent deaths per 100,000 inhabitants this year from a rate of 35.3 for every 100,000 inhabitants in 2022. He said that's the lowest since 2001 and is 1/3 of what it was in 2016. That's craziness. And I want to just share one other thing, food for thought, because this is not a joke. Now you see, all of these Chinese that are coming over the border. And China is emptying its prisons and sending them to America, and other countries are doing the same. Venezuela, El Salvador, Guatemala, a lot of them have done that same thing. And the funny thing was, in Andy Biggs was telling me that, or telling on this video that we were watching, that, well, actually it's a Yuma County supervisor was talking, that some of the medication packets that they find down there at the border in Yuma are actually kind of like psych meds. It's for people who are bipolar, who have mental issues, who should be institutionalized, is the kind of medication that they were finding dropped on the ground. And he said these are people that should not be, out in the public if they're on these type of meds, and especially if they've dumped their meds, because they don't want anything to identify them as who they are. They drop their currency, they drop their identification, they drop their medication, because maybe on the medication it says a pharmacy of where they got it. If there's any indication that they were in Mexico for any length of time, or had gotten a work permit and were working there, or claimed asylum there at one point, that would be definite denial for an asylum claim in the United States. So they get rid of anything and everything that indicates who they are. So, that's pretty scary that we've got people like that coming over our border. And if what that tweet is said is true, we already know that the Venezuelan prisons were emptied out. We already know that. That's where this whole violent gang came from. But it makes sense seeing this onslaught of Chinese invaders all of a sudden. And it makes sense that maybe the Chinese government is sending these people. We'll let you out of prison, but you're going to follow this path, take this flight, go here, go there, see this person. The Chinese have people down in Mexico. They got connections with the cartel. Of course, they're going to have probably a travel agent who does all of that for them and plans it all. So, this 3.5 years of the Biden administration in Mayorkas has done nothing for the good of America. And we got a lot of work to do, folks, to get the ship righted again and get things back on track. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I will see you back here again on Tuesday. Hoping to get some guests lined up next week, and I will see you then. Have a great weekend.